Hello, everyone. My name is William Cornea. A visual description of myself that I'm doing for the first time is I'm a white male wearing a blue shirt. I've got a bit of a beard going on, and I've got glasses with a black frame on. And it is an absolute pleasure to host the session, or to introduce Bela, who's going to be facilitating this session about this awesome concept of inclusive accessibility. And yeah, I've had the pleasure of talking with Bela about this topic for a long time now, and I'm learning so much every single day. And yeah, I'm really excited to learn along with all of you. Yeah, Bela, you're welcome to take it away. Oh, you're still muted. That was my fault. You should be able to do that.
I was like, click, click, click. I know my fingers are working a little better than that this morning. I love that. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that introduction, Will. Hello, everyone. For those who don't know me, my name is Bela Gaytan. My pronouns are she, her. Visual description of myself: I am a light-skinned Latina woman. I have short, very curly, let's go with blue-green hair because I don't know what color it really is. And I'm wearing a black shoulderless top. I'm wearing gold jewelry. There's a green wall behind me with a painting of an owl, my massive gaming computer, and some plants. Let me get in here. While I'm pulling up my slides, so first of all, for anyone that's not been to my presentations, I try to be as interactive as possible. I don't want to feel like a lecturer up here in the front of the room while everybody is, just being forced to listen to me. Thank you, Courtney. Courtney says, very cute owl. But I will try to pay attention to chat as much as possible. My amazing comrade, Will, please call out anything you see that you think I should address like in the moment in case I miss it. But I would love to know in chat, what is it that brought you here today? What was it about this webinar that you're like, I totally want to spend some time with Bela today? That's also a valid reason as well. I will accept that because I love spending time with folks. And I'm going to get everything set up for sharing here while I'm waiting for that to come through. Is anyone else like me when you get ready to share and you feel like a noob, even though you've done it a million times? I'm always like looking from screen to screen. Okay, so I'm gonna do. Tuck says, spending time with Bela, number one. Number two, learning to dig deeper with accessibility. Will says it happens to him all the time. Tracy, all the ways we can think about accessibility. Aaron says, I'm always wanting to learn more about inclusivity. How can I do better? Courtney, oh, how sweet, Courtney. Thank you so much. Courtney says, your posts, oh, this is coming in fast. Your posts and engagement, honestly, I love how honest and straightforward you are. I knew this would be a great workshop. Oh, you all are fabulous. Feel free to be keep it going in chat. I'm all for that. But I'm going to go ahead and get started because I want to make sure that I have time for some Q&A and like a big announcement at the end. So we're going to jump right into it. Let me get my screen shared and get everything sorted here. Can everybody see my screen? I cannot see my chat, but that is, okay. Got that up and I see thumbs up. Okay, perfect, perfect. So we're going to jump right in, my friends. This is inclusive accessibility beyond colors and captions. So just a little bit about myself. As I said, Bela Gaytan, she, her pronouns. My day job, I'm a technical instructional designer at Pantheon. I'm also an IDEA practitioner with NASA. IDEA is inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. I consult for them. Then I'm also a WordPress web developer on the side, and I own an agency. and a speaker and coach. So I love to do a lot of stuff. I'm somewhat known for my authenticity, my transparency, and my vulnerability, and discussing, we will put quotes here, taboo topics, because I don't think that anything should be taboo when we're talking about the work of, inclusion and accessibility and diversity. I use my lived experiences as someone who is neurodivergent. I'm queer. I'm the daughter of migrant workers, field workers. I'm physically disabled. I have to look back at the screen here because I always forget everything that I have. And I'm colorblind. So I use all of those experiences that I have personally to help teach folks about, diversity, equity, inclusion, accessibility, belonging, social justice. Little fun fact about me, I have the 3 C's that I live by. I love coffee, cats, and comedy. And I disrupt spaces. I bring the big Bela energy. So that's a little about me. So we're going to jump right in. When we're talking about accessibility, I'm going to turn to the chat now. Who benefits from accessibility? Who are some of the different populations or groups of folks that you think would benefit from accessibility? And I'm going to look on the chat here. Will tossed out my LinkedIn. Thank you. Cassie, proud cat mom. Yeah. Dyslexia, everyone. Let's see. Ooh, Tracy, I love how you worded that. I think everyone, sometimes we don't know what we need to learn. Yeah. Sandra mentions collaboration. Sarah, everyone, the curb cut effect. Yeah, definitely. So let's go through here and let's talk about some of the people that benefit from accessibility in addition to what you all have put in chat. I do want to give a disclaimer before I go. I try to do this at the beginning and I usually forget. I don't use presenter notes. I prefer to just interact with you all naturally and organically. As I said earlier, I am neurodivergent and I do have some cognitive impairments and damage in my brain. So sometimes I may say something that doesn't come out the way that I'm thinking it does. If at any point you're like, what the hell is she talking about? Just toss it out in chat. I'm happy to try to reword it. That's my assistant in the background who I think is going to make an appearance soon. But yeah, just let me know if at any point you're like, I don't understand what you mean. Could you please explain that in a different way? Don't feel shy to speak up about that, please. So hopping back in here, who benefits from accessibility? So people with mobility impairments benefit from accessibility. This one will probably throw a lot of folks off because when you think of accessibility, you're thinking of disabilities. And I'm saying now, LGBTQIA plus folks. So for anyone who might not be aware, that acronym is lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender. Q can be questioning or queer. I, intersex, A, asexual, and the plus is for additional identities that are not mentioned in there. And we'll circle around back to that later and you'll see why I'm including them here for accessibility. People with visual impairments are going to benefit from accessibility. Persons who are deaf or hard of hearing will benefit from accessibility. Individuals with intellectual disabilities, like my amazing uncle, Norby here, who prefers to be called DJ Norby because he's a rap superstar. And you'll see him again in this presentation. For context, my uncle has intellectual and developmental disabilities and enjoys being a star here with my work. And finally, as you all said, everyone benefits from accessibility. Everyone. And as looking back at the chat, I don't remember who said it, but whoever said, like, sometimes we don't know what we need. That's a really good point. And we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. So when we're talking about accessibility, we're typically talking about disabilities, right? We're talking about, as we just covered, visual disabilities, hearing and speech, cognitive and physical. But when we bring inclusion into it, it forms this sweet spot in the center that I like to call inclusive accessibility. Let me explain that a bit before we move forward. So for inclusive accessibility, I feel that it is equally important to provide a psychologically safe space for learners. And we'll go into that a little bit more, but I want us to move beyond thinking about accessibility in a very, how can I say it, like a rigid way. I think people hear the word accessibility and they think, well, I don't know all the guidelines. I don't know exactly how I'm supposed to do this for compliance. And while that information is definitely needed and important, my goal in talking to you about inclusive accessibility is I want you to walk away from this presentation feeling empowered to go ahead and start making a difference, to go ahead and start being more inclusive and accessible without having to look at a list, without having to look at guidelines. I want it to be very natural. And I hope that I'm able to kind of instill that in all of you in this presentation today. So I'm going to take a break to have a coffee drink, and I'll turn to the chat here to make sure nobody has questions or comments here. Thank you for quoting me, Tuck. Tuck says in chat, I call James Tuck. That's my thing. I want you to walk away from this presentation feeling empowered to go ahead and start making a difference with it feeling very natural. Yeah. I was thinking about that last night, and I was thinking, it's funny because as an instructional designer, we're always working with learning objectives. And I thought, well, what's the learning objective? If I had to give one objective for this presentation, what is it? And that's exactly what it would be, is that I just want folks to walk away and feel like I can make a difference right now. I can leave this webinar and I can immediately go make a difference. So, all right, awesome. I'm going to move forward. And now we're going to move into specific examples of these different domains of disability, if you will. And we'll talk about different scenarios or situations, and then specific fixes you can do. And we'll discuss kind of the why, because I think understanding the why is what's going to bring that kind of natural, innate awareness about accessibility and what to do. So we'll start with visual. And when we're talking about visual disabilities, we're talking about things like partial or total vision loss, low vision, color blindness. I'm colorblind. And that's something that prior to me learning more about accessibility, whenever I would be in a situation where I couldn't see something because of the different, colors being used, I would just stop and say, well, it's my problem. I'm the one that's colorblind, not everyone else that's looking at this, that's consuming this content, So we want to be mindful of things like that. The next three you might be looking at and thinking, wait, those aren't disabilities. Well, they actually are. You have permanent disabilities, such as chronic conditions. You have conditions that come and go, that are intermittent, that flare up. And then you have what you call situational and temporary disabilities. So a temporary disability would be something like you have painful eyes due to allergies, or you have a pink eye, conjunctivitis, infection in your eye. Situational could be something like light sensitivity, or like you went to an eye exam and you got your eyes dilated. You're not necessarily disabled, but in that moment, you require accommodations. You require additional support so that you have an equitable experience with the content that you're consuming, right? So just looking at chat for a moment. Okay, awesome. So yeah, those are the different types of visual disabilities that we can think of. So looking back to the start of this presentation, you'll notice that Will gave a wonderful visual description of himself, and I gave one as well. The reason to do that is so that anyone that is not able to see us on camera has that equitable experience. So if someone is blind, they have an idea of who they're interacting with, of what the scene looks like. Perhaps we have a new mother who is feeding her baby. and cannot be at the computer. Maybe, you know, they've got the computer going, they've got the speaker up, but they're sitting away, like on the couch. This gives them also an equitable experience in the session because they're able to listen and be able to have that visual description in their mind as they're able to consume the content. Does that make sense? Looking at chat here, Kelly Nichols, a sick toddler at home. Exactly. You may not be able to sit right at the computer, but you're going to benefit by having like these different accommodations already in place. Yeah, Courtney says, I've had to listen with my earbuds while I rock a baby to sleep several times. Yeah. So when we're talking about all of these different types of visual disabilities, let's talk about the design considerations. So I mentioned earlier that I'm colorblind. So one of the things to do is ensure that you have adequate color contrast. One of the tools that I love to use is WebAIM. Look at Will. Oh, everyone, like, please throw up some emojis for Will. He is so amazing. That is the one that I recommend the most. WebAIM is a phenomenal company. They have some great resources available. Their color contrast checker is very basic, very simple user interface. One of the questions I get asked a lot are, is this color inaccessible? Colors themselves aren't inaccessible, it's the color contrast. So if you're looking at the screen now, if you're able to see what I have on the screen in the slide, I have a black top border, and then the word inclusive accessibility is in a yellow color. Let's say I didn't have the black background, but I had a white background. That would probably not be accessible because white is already a very bright light color, and so is yellow. So there just wouldn't be enough contrast for someone to be able to differentiate and distinguish, you know, the colors and the content. Yeah, Michelle brought up a really great point. If it doesn't show up in grayscale, it doesn't matter what color it is. Yeah, that's a good point, Michelle. And there's tools out there as well. I can't think of any off my head right now, where you can, it can automatically analyze your image and put it into grayscale so that you can see if any of the content of the image or graphic will be lost for someone with visual disabilities. So other things we want to make sure to do is include alt text for images. And alt text is a very brief, very simple description of what is in the photo. This is something that is read out loud for people that are using screen readers. And you just want to say something very basic. So for this picture, I could say something like a person sits on a chair with a white cane for blind folks. It could just be something very simple like that. Allowing users the ability to zoom in on content is really helpful. Using text instead of images for text. And let me explain that. And I'm going to age myself here. Does anyone remember back in, I want to say like the late 90s, early 2000s, when you had all these online generators where you could go put your name or you could put something in there and it would animate it for you. And maybe it had like flames and it had like bubble letters or something like that, right? It was like all the rage on MySpace and what was the other one? Zonga and like Yahoo GeoCities. Yeah, Sandra, the original word art. Courtney, you mentioned image description. I'll touch up on that in a minute to explain the difference between alt text and image description. That's a good point though. Thank you. But yeah, so if you're using some type of tool and you're making a graphic of text, if you don't add alt text to that, people with screen readers will not be able to know what that content even says. So if you want to use it sparingly, maybe as like, you know, just a banner at the top, that's fine. Add alt text to say, you know, animated text saying, I'm cool, you know. I'm looking at the time, trying to stay on track here, but you guys are putting such great stuff in the chat. Let's see. So this ties into color contrast, not relying on color alone to convey the info. We think of red for stop and green for go. If you're using maybe like a red circle and a green circle to signify maybe correct or incorrect, Make sure you have text with it as well, so that someone that's colorblind doesn't just see two circles and not be able to know what the icon stands for. And then also we talked about visual descriptions in live events and why that's important. And then clear and concise page titles, link text, headings, and labels. If you've never experienced someone live using a screen reader, I highly recommend it. If you reach out to me, it's slipping my mind right now. There's an organization that does accessibility workshops and stuff like that. And they regularly have someone who is blind that will go through a website live and analyze it while using the screen reader. Reach out to me on social media or my website or LinkedIn or whatever, and I can give you that. It's just the name is slipping my mind right now. But the reason that you want to have those clear and concise page titles, just imagine for a moment that you can't see what's on the screen and think, how am I going to get to the different sections of the document or the website? You want to have very clear titles so that the person that's using the screen reader can be able to jump around and navigate the document, right? Oh, Will's got a question of look like this. Yeah, definitely. Let me get to that as I get a little bit further. I don't know if it's Paul or Paul E. But yeah, it says our phrases like let's walk through this or let's take a closer look, necessarily non-inclusive word choices. I've switched from click on this to select this or select that. Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a little bit. That's a great point to bring up. So moving along, let's talk about hearing and speech. So this super handsome genetic clone of me is my father. He couldn't deny me if he tried. And I'll explain why I have us on this slide. So we're going to talk about hearing and speech disabilities. So again, we're going to talk about, permanent disabilities as well as situational and temporary. So the different types of disabilities could be someone who's deaf or hard of hearing. My dad is deaf in one ear. Someone who stutters or stammers, that could be one of the speech disabilities. Speech sound disorders would be something like a speech impediment. I had to go through speech therapy when I was younger due to my speech impediment. And there's still times now if I get kind of really excited or angry or passionate, that it's like my brain forgets those lessons that I learned, and I'll notice, problems with my speech. Some of the other things that can affect, speech and hearing would be throat cancer, someone who has strep throat, or someone who has an ear infection. I keep looking at hearing and I'm trying to put that together with ear. Let's see. So some of the design considerations for people like myself and my dad and others would be allow different communication options. Duolingo does a really good job with this for the most part, though I've seen some issues lately that when you're going through the different language learning lessons, and there's one where you have to listen, there's a little link at the bottom that says, I am unable to listen right now. I think initially it was put in there for people who may be in a very loud room, but it also serves to support folks that are deaf or hard of hearing. And likewise, they have the same feature with when you have speaking exercises, it'll say, I cannot speak right now. And again, I think that was probably for folks that are like on a commute, on a train, going to work with a lot of people around, but it also benefits people that have, speech disorders and the technology may not pick up on what they're saying. Provide captions on video and audio. That one's pretty self-explanatory, I think. Don't assume that all folks that are deaf and hard of hearing know sign language. That's a big one. I have a good friend, Meryl Evans, accessibility superstar. She is deaf, but she lip reads. So that's something to keep in mind. And then finally, just allow extra time in communication. Try to think about people that have some type of like speech or hearing disorder. If you give like a timed limit for some type of activity that could be not only very stressful for them, but it could be it could present, you know, a massive barrier for them to be able to accomplish whatever that task is. So I'm going to pause here. I know we have so much stuff in the chat, so I'm kind of testingaccessibility.com. Jose, I'm not sure if, I don't think that's the one. I'll have to look through it because I attended one within the past month, so I can go through like my calendar. Brian says, would offering an AI reader as an alternative or opportunity to a recorded audio for student submission make sense? Let's see. If I'm understanding the question correctly, you're saying that if, let's just use like Duolingo, like a language situation, and for student uncomfortable with speech, stammering. Okay, now I get it. Yeah, that is a really, really good question. I actually have a friend who's a disability advocate and has his own organization for stuttering and stammering. I'm going to present that question to him, and I will share that response on social media, on LinkedIn. So if you follow me on LinkedIn, I will find out about that. I think, though, at first, not glance, but, you know, just first thinking about it offhand right now, I would question, why does it have to be spoken if why would you require the speaker to submit an audio if it's not them speaking? Because at that point, the student is not proving that they can enunciate things in a certain way or pronounce words. They're writing a paper. So I would say, and they're feeding it to an AI tool. So I would say, just don't force people to have to do like a speaking exercise, offer them the alternative to be able to do like a written exercise. I hope that answers your question. And again, keep in mind, like I don't consider myself an accessibility expert. I don't consider myself even like a DEIA expert, because I'm always learning every day. And I think it's very important that we learn from others who have lived experience. So you see, my default answer was, I'm going to reach out to someone who actually stammers and stutters and get their input on that. So keep that in mind. Let's see. Okay, so let's move along. Keep the questions coming. I think Will's keeping track of them, so I can be able to touch on them at the end. So physical disabilities. And I think this is what a lot of us think about when we hear the word disability or accessibility. So different types of physical disabilities would be things like multiple sclerosis, partial or full paralysis, arthritis, connective tissue disorders, but also someone that just recently had a surgery or a broken bone. Again, using lived experience of folks here, I had an uncle that was paralyzed from the neck down. He had very limited movement in his arms, but he didn't want to give up cigarettes. So he had people get a fork and spread the tines. I think that's what you call them, tines, open a little bit. And it was taped to his hand with like medical tape and then like a little like cloth bandage wrapped around. And he had just enough movement to lean forward and have his cigarette in between there so that he could still smoke. That is disability ingenuity at its best. But again, it's just, you have to adapt when you don't have the tools necessary. So how much more amazing is it when we have that already in place and folks can come in and exist as they are, right? Another example here, I mentioned connective tissue disorders. I have a genetic connective tissue disorder that essentially I have defective collagen in all of the connective tissue in my body. So I hyperextend every time I'm moving any of my joints. So I have arthritis in like almost all of my joints. And I have a very limited amount of energy with typing and just doing things with my finger, to the point that even sometimes when I'm typing and I'm pushing things, I'm always pushing too hard and hyperextending, and will sometimes partially dislocate my joints just from everyday activities. So at the end of the day, I get to a point where my hands can't let me be on social media anymore, or be on my phone anymore, or consume content online anymore. So it's really important to stop and think about people who do have that limited energy or capacity to physically interact with content. I'll give examples here in the design considerations. So don't solely rely on mouse input. I know that was brought up roundabout earlier as a question about like saying, instead of saying click to continue, you could say select the button to continue. I forget what the other example was that was given, but that's really awesome. What was said through that. Yeah, there you go, Will. Thank you so much. Let's walk through this. Let's take a closer look. I personally wouldn't say that they're necessarily non-inclusive word choices, but they are just a little bit more sensitive to say things like that. And I think it's one of those things that we've grown up hearing these different phrases before, and it's hard to break that. I'll give you all an example. I said you guys earlier. I am trying to break myself from that, just for folks who may feel uncomfortable with the word guys, because it typically is used for people that are men or identify as male. And I'm trying to say you all, but I still have moments where I do that, and I'm doing my best. I grew up in Michigan, so the whole you guys thing is kind of like, you know, it's etched into my mind. But okay, looking at the time, we're doing good. Okay. I'm going to pause so I can get a drink of my nectar from the gods here. Does anyone have anything they need me to explain further? If you have questions, keep them coming. And I'll get to them at the end so I can make sure that I get through all this content. But if there's anything I've said where you're like, I don't know what that means, Bella, you sound like you're speaking a different language to me, like, please toss that in there, and I'm happy to elaborate on anything. You know what's funny, Kelly, and I'm going to admit this in front of all of you. I originally being from Michigan, and I'm in Tennessee, and I've been in Tennessee for quite some time. I was very resistant to say y'all, because it was just this, let's admit it, there's this stereotype about the South that folks aren't as educated, that folks are, you know, ignorant. And I hate that so much. But that was like in my mind, and I would hear y'all and I would just think, oh, that sounds so, I don't know what the word would be. And then with everyone kind of reviving that word and using it, you know, for people that aren't from the South, there's still that part of me that kind of held back. And I was just like, you know, I don't want to say y'all. So I say you all, but sometimes in my mind, I think y'all. So I think at some point I'm going to come around to that. It's one of those things. Kelly says, except Canadians don't use it. Personally, as a woman, I prefer you guys. I'm fine with you guys. And like I said, I grew up with that up in Michigan, and I've heard yous as well. Like when I've gone over into Canada to like Windsor area, like right across from Detroit. Oh goodness, yeah, Courtney. Yeah, when I first moved down, I have to say this and then I'll move on. When I first moved down to Tennessee from Michigan, I lived in a military town for 2 years, which was great. There was like all this diversity and stuff. Then I came to where I'm at now, which is very different. And I heard people say yens. And I was like, what? And at the time I was like 16 working at Kentucky Fried Chicken. I had to have coworkers help me translate some of the people that came in and would talk because I couldn't understand their Southern accents. That's lovely. I love that. Okay, let's continue on here. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see like all the chat. I love it. I love this interaction. So again, talking about design considerations, don't rely solely on mouse input. Let it be where people can use the keyboard or like a stylus or something like that. Avoid causing the user to excessively scroll and do navigational clicks. Using myself as an example, I post about this on LinkedIn quite a bit. Although it looks really cool to have like, hey, enter, enter. Guess what? Enter, enter. I have a big surprise at this end of this webinar. Enter, 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 enter. Are you in? I could have done that, but it just makes people scroll a lot more than is required. And again, for people, think about someone that's in a wheelchair and has very limited mobility, or they're only able to maybe use one finger. Can you imagine how much stress goes through that one finger when every day, they're having to do so many different movements and clicks already? You don't want to like further tax them in their health. Ensure content is viewable on various device layouts. Not everybody uses a cell phone when they're looking at content. People use laptops, people use computers, people use tablets. People may use some sort of like tool that somehow integrates with some sort of assistive technology that they have. So you want to make sure that your content is able to be viewable on the various different device layouts. And then finally, offer multiple methods for interacting with content. If someone is not able to participate in think of like a simulation or a drag and drop scenario, right? Someone with a physical disability doesn't really have the same chance to be able to interact with that content. So try to come up with an alternative. Maybe create a video that instead of them doing the drag and drop, it shows someone going through the different choices and what the feedback would be, so that they have that experience, but you're not causing them unnecessary stress and additional pain. So now we're moving to cognitive disabilities. And again, this is my epic uncle, DJ Norby. I have to provide a visual description here because I think he's the cutest ever in this picture. So DJ Norby is a tan Mexican man in his 70s, early 70s. He's wearing a bucket hat that is black with red roses, and it has Selena, the artist, on there. He's wearing a blue muscle shirt with, I don't know, American flag colors and something. He's got a bunch of like necklaces on and stuff like that. He's smiling and looking off into the distance. He really is the coolest ever. Like, I wish everybody knew him. So different types of cognitive disabilities. You have intellectual disabilities like DJ Norby has. Neurodivergence, which can refer to folks that have ADHD, which is attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, autism, personality disorders as well, which may come as a surprise to many folks. You have conditions such as dyslexia, dyscalculia, people with memory loss, someone who may have recently had a concussion, or those of us that suffer with migraines and severe headaches. And the way that that kind of plays in, you might be thinking, how does a headache have to do with cognitive disability or cognitive function? You are lucky if you've never had a headache so bad that it does cause you to not be able to think, to not be able to remember. And that's one of the reasons that that is here, because pain can do that to us, right? So we need to keep that in mind. Again, I'm going to go a little quickly through these last few slides. We are almost done with the slides because I want to make sure I have plenty of time for questions. So design considerations would be image descriptions. Someone asked about this earlier. So to recap, alt text is a very simple description so that someone using a screen reader understands what is in the image. So using DJ Norby here, the alt text would be, it could be DJ Norby sitting on a couch smiling. It could be a person smiling. It could be very, very simple like that. An image description would be what I provided earlier when I went into a lot more detail about what does DJ Norby look like? What is he wearing? What kind of expression does he have in his face? The reason that image descriptions are equally important as alt text is someone like me that's colorblind, I may not know what colors are in the photo. And although that may not be crucial information, it's still really nice to have, right? So that I have that chance to be able to participate in the same way that someone who is not colorblind does, right? Image descriptions are also really important for people that have cognitive disabilities, because they may not understand the context of the picture. As someone who, I have ADHD, I'm likely autistic, and I have borderline personality disorder. So I have 3 things playing in there with my neurodivergence. If I didn't know DJ Norby and I saw this picture, I might think that he's crying because his eyes are very small. They look kind of glassy, watery. He's not smiling with his teeth. So by me saying that he is smiling and looking off in the distance, I can understand like, oh, this is a happy picture. This is not a picture that's meant to convey like there's something painful or emotionally damaging, you know, in this content. So that's a really good reason for image description. So in image description, you would want to give a little bit more of a detailed description of what is in the photo, mention colors. If there's any type of like significance that wouldn't be understandable, like right as the person's looking at the content, like include that. I can't think of an example now, but hopefully I will. And mention emotion as well for people who struggle to be able to differentiate different facial expressions and social cues. Use clear and concise language. I know sometimes we want to fluff it up and we add in all these big words, but at the end of the day, like we just need people to understand the point and not all the fluff that we put into different content. So just use clear and concise language. Chat GPT is really great for that because I tend to be very wordy. You can hear how much I'm talking as proof. I will put my text in a Chat GPT and say, please condense this for clarity and concisement. And it is phenomenal how that will break it down into very simple and clear language. Avoiding cognitive overload. Don't have too much stuff going on the screen or in the content that it can be distracting to what you want them to actually learn from your content. I said providing context when it's not clear and be engaging without being busy. A very quick example, I was in a webinar once where the host had a massive aquarium in the background, very beautiful fish swimming. You could hear the bubbling. As they were presenting, they had a border in the video that was like a scene through space, almost like Star Wars, like the kind of zoom type thing, and also some music as he's talking. So for me, that was 100% overwhelming for me. And I had to leave after 5 minutes because it was just, there was too much stuff going on. It was too busy. Okay, so we've talked about the different domains. We've talked about visual, speech and hearing, cognitive, and physical. So now let's hop back into inclusive accessibility, the intersection of all of these and more. So thinking about accessibility and the different representation that you see in accessibility, here's the people that are often left out. LGBTQIA+ folks, especially trans folks, immigrants and non-native speakers, those that have traumas, neurodivergent folks. Although we mentioned them earlier, I still think it needs to be mentioned again because we're often left out with accessibility. People of color, persons wearing religious clothing, like a woman wearing hijab, the elderly, and plus-sized folks. So more inclusive design considerations to be able to include these people would be when you're using inclusive assets, photos, videos, go beyond skin color. It's really troubling if you put into almost all of the different stock image sites out there, diverse office coworkers. You'll typically see a lot of different skin colors, not a lot of very dark skin colors because colorism is a thing as well. And you'll see Black folks and other BIPOC that have more melanin, but you won't typically see very dark skinned people in there because of colorism. But when you're looking at that diverse photo, it's typically folks that are in their 30s. They're all about the same size. They're thin. They all look happy. They all look, again, I'm putting quotes here, attractive by what society thinks is attractive. So when you're looking at different situations, different assets like that, like go beyond skin color. Include people that are old, include people that are fat, include people that have very dark skin, include people, include everybody, right? Avoid triggering language. This is for people that have traumas. Stuff like, I don't want to mention the different things because it could very well be triggering for folks here, but we have a lot of phrases in English that, and I'm sure these are in other languages as well, that have traumatic words or violent words. And it's what people think is a harmless phrase, but if someone has been through that type of trauma that is associated with that word or action, it can be very hurtful, and it does not provide a psychologically safe space. I saw this really quickly. I want to say that Kelly made a great point. This is making me think of socioeconomic diversity as well. Yeah. How many times do you look at assets and you put in like neighborhood and you see like a neighborhood that has a lower socioeconomic status? You always see these really well manicured lawns and, the different cookie cutter houses. So that's a really good point. Use gender neutral language. We don't have to, and we talked about this with you guys, and whether or not anyone is comfortable with being called you guys, we have to think beyond ourselves, right? As I said, I'm fine with being referred to as you guys. Go by Father and Uncle Bela, so that should be an indication there that I'm fine with stuff like that, but not everyone is, so keep that in mind. Avoid slang and jargon, or if you do want to use slang and jargon, make sure that you add in what that means. This will benefit people that are possibly neurodivergent, or people that are not part of the culture that slang comes from, or the language that slang comes from. We talked about using a clear writing style, providing context for images and stories, explain acronyms and abbreviations and terms that may not be known by all. And I see we have 10 minutes, so I'm like zooming through here. So before I get to my announcement, I want to close with the importance of lived experiences. So you're hearing all of this from me, but you're hearing my very limited experience with my different identities and conditions, as well as people that I know close to me. You can read up on accessibility guidelines day and night, but until you talk to people that have lived experience, and the same thing with things like racism and homophobia and stuff like that, you can read things in the news all day, but make sure that you're listening to the lived experiences of people as well, and listening to what they are asking for, what they are demanding, what they need in order to exist equitably alongside of us, right? As an example, this is a picture of me at a conference a few years ago for the connective tissue disorder, rare disease that I have. I am in there, you just can't see me, I'm way back in the back, but it was the first time in my life that I was surrounded by people that understood how I felt, because having rare diseases like I do, I often have to educate my doctors. They've only heard about my things in books, they've never dealt with a patient. So to be around people that understood provided me so much more information than any doctor ever could. So our voices matter. And this goes the same for everyone that's in underrepresented and marginalized communities. So just make sure you're taking the time to listen to and learn from us. Okay, taking a breath. So we have like 9 minutes left. I'm able to stay a little bit later if anybody would like to, but I'm going to take a drink here. I love that someone put in the affect the verb collection. That is really great. I have another source for pictures. Reach out to me and remind me, and I can send those to you. I can't remember what it's called right now, but it's an app for plus size folks. Is it All Go? Like the word all and go, maybe. Oh, I see Dr. Jess said my brother had Ehlers-Danlos. Yeah, it's definitely a challenge. Okay, so I want to get time for questions. Will, defer to you on this one. Should I do the surprise now or should I hit the questions?
Let's do
Either
the
way.
surprise quickly, and then we can
Okay.
jump into the questions.
Okay, so I have a big surprise to share. I want all of you to start doing the drum roll. I can't hear you, but I just want that collective energy. Ta-da! I'm launching a course on EduFlow. So super excited about this. The course is called Building an Inclusive Quality Assurance Rubric. So it's designed to serve decision makers and instructional designers who want to improve their organization by, boosting their inclusion and accessibility efforts. It's a 3-week cohort-based course. And by the end, you will walk away with your own customized QA framework in place. You will build that baby and be able to walk away and use that for your content. So I invite everyone to join me, take the first step towards creating a more inclusive and accessible environment for all. I will be making a post on all social media within the next couple of hours, announcing this and having it on my website as well. It's been a little bit of a rough week here for me. So I've been like running behind a little bit. So that's why it's not ready right now. So bear with me, give me a couple hours. Also, I want to say that I am running a promotion/contest. I'm going to be giving away some free seats to this course. The course is $99. So I think we've set the price point pretty affordable. But I am going to be giving away some free seats and discount codes. So again, when I post this online within a couple hours, it will have the link to the form. So I encourage you to share it with folks. Talk to your organization about it, because it would be an amazing asset for you to be able to tell them, hey, I can make sure that we're doing our best for inclusion and accessibility, and to have a framework so that we can measure all of our content against this, right? Okay, thank you. Keep an eye out for the post, tell others about the course. I think Will linked it in the chat. So there's the overview of the course. And yeah, again, just give me a couple hours and I'll have the post out there. And finally, my closing for everything is much love. Be a good human. Don't be a stranger. I'd love to connect. I will leave this up on the screen, but I will minimize it. No, I'll actually, yeah, we'll just minimize it here. So looking to chat, and Will is a blessing and has kept track of the questions. So I'm going to roll through these as fast as I can. And again, I can stay a little bit later. And are you all still able to see my screen? Okay, I'm seeing heads nodding. Okay, cool. Let's see. So Amy asked, when you design for accessibility, there's a lot more to say and describe. Does it mean we land up increasing the seat time? I'm not familiar with the term seat time. If someone can pop that in chat. Are you saying, is it going to mean a longer course for people, or a longer course, like a longer time for the instructional designer to have to build the course? I'm going to move on, and then I'll scroll back and check in the chat for that clarification. Courtney says, I've noticed your LinkedIn post, you include image description in the post itself rather than using the alt text option. I actually use both. So as I explained in the presentation, I put the alt text in with the very simple explanation of this is what this photo is. And then I include the image description, which can benefit, neurodivergent folks, folks who are colorblind, folks who have partial vision loss, but don't necessarily use a screen reader. And so, yeah, there's that. And yeah, it's not the testing accessibility workshop. It's something else. Again, ADHD here. So if someone reaches out to me and just sends me a message and says, hey, please don't forget to share that, I'll be on that. Brian's question about the AI reader, I'm going to reach out to my colleague on that. Sandra has a question, an e-learning specific question. Is there a way to make a drag and drop interaction more inclusive for those who are vision impaired? My opinion is don't do it. Really, I know that's a really like straightforward answer, but I would just say don't do it, because you already know that it's not going to be like as inclusive for someone who has visual impairments. And this also crosses over into physical type things. So there's a lot of times, especially at the end of the day, when my hands and stuff are fatigued, that I struggle with clicking boxes. And I'll just like walk away because I get so frustrated with it. So there's probably a way to make a drag and drop interaction more inclusive. I will look into that, but typically if I include them, I include an alternative as well. And is there a way of making voice commands in a lesson, asks Michelle. I think that would be that would be like authoring tool specific. And that would, yeah. I'm assuming that there's probably some type of like plugin or app or something that can integrate with the different e-learning authoring programs to allow the voice commands. But if you're using a screen reader, there's screen readers as well where you can use your voice to command stuff that you can say like skip or next or stuff like that to be able to navigate. Okay, let me scroll back down. Ooh, Kelly says that Articulate eLearning Heroes has a guide for how to create an accessible drag and drop. Super cool. Missy says, I didn't think it was that great though. Yeah. Articulate has a long way to come with accessibility. I love them, and the eLearning Heroes community is fabulous, but there's a lot of stuff that they could do to boost that. Seat time, expected learning time. Okay, thanks for that, Will. No, I don't think it would increase the expected learning time at all. If anything, for the people that you're going to accommodate, it would lessen it for them because they're not going to have to do like any kind of workarounds. They're not going to miss any of the content or have to do like any outside like digging to be able to find out like, well, what did I miss here? Or how can I better understand this? I think it would actually lessen it. We're at time here. Will, do you have a hard stop for this, or do you want me to keep going a little bit? Okay, I'm happy to go. Anybody that has to leave, like, thank you so much for spending time with me today. Again, much love, be an awesome human. Share about the course and keep an eye out for my post in a couple hours. Is the EduFlow course similar? Yeah. Let's see. What is your, Christina says, what is your opinion on creating different design features for different disabilities? In a sense, allowing users to personalize the look of a web page for bigger text or alternative colors. And how do you think this compares to just making one generally accessible design? That is a great question, Christina. There's no such thing as one generally accessible design, because even if we follow every single accessibility guideline that is in place, if your document comes back with like, oh, 100% score, you did everything right, it's still going to be inaccessible for folks. I will give you an example. If you notice in a lot of my graphics and even with my website design, I use black. I don't use the muted kind of grayish black. And according to accessibility guidelines, that grayish kind of muted, I don't really know how to describe it, but I hope you understand what I'm talking about. That kind of grayish black is supposed to be easier on the eyes. For me, it's not. I don't like it. It forces me to squint. I don't understand the why of that. I don't know if that has something to do with my astigmatism, if it's my color blindness, if it's the damage that I have in my brain. Like, I really don't know why. So even though that is considered accessible and like a best practice, it doesn't work for me. So there's never going to be anything that's 100% accessible. In terms of allowing the users to personalize the look of a web page. So you have the different companies, like, I want to say the first one comes to mind. I think it's called Accessiby, like Accessa for accessibility, and then the word B, like BE. But it's a tool that you can add to your website that allows all the different accessibility options. Kelly says user way. Super cool. Okay. There's a lot of problems with those though, because those are considered overlays and they present unique problems as well to the site that have to do with accessibility. So SiteGround, I'm actually going to, let me stop. No, I'll actually keep sharing so you all can see this. And I hope I can find the exact page. I use SiteGround for my hosting, and they have done such an amazing job with accessibility in terms of exactly what you're talking about. Let's see, let me go to, I'm trying to remember where this is. Appearance. Okay, if everyone can see, you can see like I have a dark theme on here, and I'm pointing like you all can see that. That's just my hands. If you go to appearance, they have done this perfectly. So, like if I want a easy read font, there we go. I wouldn't call that easy read though, not for me. So again, see what could be helpful for someone might not be helpful for all. I'm going to turn that off. So you have the themes. You have light, which bothers me intensely. You have high contrast light, which would be, and if you notice, if you'll look at the different, like look at this once we change, it's very subtle, but the high contrast light would be more for people that have like very severe color blindness, or very limited vision, and they need that additional light to be able to see. And then you have dark, which I think is what I have on mine. And then you have high contrast black. Although I do like that, the white lines throw me off a bit. So I prefer the dark one. But that is like accessibility done in such a great way. Because folks get to kind of choose from a few different accessible options and be able to customize it. That's not so easy to do on like, if you're doing your portfolio like that without using an overlay, you'd have to like code out all the different stuff. It's something I'd like to do with my site someday, but right now I just don't have the bandwidth to do that. I'm looking through here. I think I got to all of the questions. If for some reason you asked a question that we missed, again, feel free to reach out to me online. And again, thank you everyone for coming. Connect with me, always happy to chat. And thank you, Will, for being such a great support person here and offering me this space.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Bella. It really has been an awesome session, and I have absolutely loved the engagement in the discussions and seeing these great ideas. I always learn so much from what people share as well, like some really great resources. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to your course. I think it's going to be awesome, and I really hope that we see as many people here as we can. And I will be keeping an eye on your social media for that competition. I'm still I don't even know what it is. So I'm at the edge of my seat,
I'm surprising everyone, you all as well.
That's great. Yeah, so thank you everyone for coming, and thank you so much, Bella, for sharing with us.
Yeah, for sure. Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Goodbye, everyone.